There's so many pathways to smart growth. I wish I had information on micro-communities, infrastructure projects, and new roads. Well, come with me. I think Lydia Glaze can help us with additional information.
The quiet crucible of your personal suffering is where your noblest dreams are born. And it's also where God's greatest gifts are given for what you've been through and what you're going to do. I'll read that again. In the quiet crucible of your personal and private suffering is where your noblest dreams are born. And God's greatest gifts are given for what you've been through and what you're going to do. Thank you for being here with us today, each of you. So, welcome everybody here again, and we're just going to jump right in and begin to discuss your expert level and what you have come today to share with all of the folks who will be in our symposium. Let's get started. The first question is, share your top priority in development or innovation that your agency or your nonprofit is working on in 2021. So this is current, in progress. And we're going to start with Ms. Inga Kennedy.
Okay, thank you so much. And it's good to be with all our panelists. I think I've worked with everybody or the agencies and organizations. And if I haven't worked with you, people like Deborah Scott have challenged us as we have gone about our community engagement. But very importantly, what is occurring, and Gerald and I had some discussion before we started about South Metro and South Fulton, as we are focusing on, is what's happening within our environment. And I'm very concerned and very focused on how our new developments affect our local communities, and particularly our minority communities, and how we develop and the tools and techniques that we use and our strategies that we use can impact them negatively, particularly on the water side. When we scrape our land, we call it clear cutting. Our trees are vital to our climate and our community, and that's very real. And when we scrape our land, our water has nowhere to go except downstream. It ends up in our water resources and our water sources, and the infrastructure becomes very strained. We're being plagued by that right now in the South Fulton area. And so one of the things that we're working on is how to make sure that we get out ahead of the development and making sure that our communities are, and new developments are comprehensive, that they take into consideration the importance of our air quality and water quality, and so that we protect those who are vulnerable as we move through our processes. So our new developments look nice and pretty and all new housing, and then 5 years from now, or 5 years, 10 years from now, they're plagued with flooding and our water quality and air quality is impacted. So we're working around trying to identify and get out ahead of that development and how it's affecting our environment. That's my main focus in 2020.
We're going to move right along to Richard Rowe with NAACP. Would you share with us your top priority or development in your agency during the 2020?
Be happy to. So, probably owing to my profession as a certified public accountant, we started to focus on structure. How did we get here? And so what we know, what we are emphasizing to everybody who listens, is that all of the systems under which we operate now have been racist, have been designed to continue to marginalize people that we serve. And so it's not enough to make changes around the edges. we have to really restructure these systems, beyond not only policing, and we like to call it public safety, but also education. We know voting rights, but also development. We have tools, but the tools have been used to not benefit for black and brown communities. For example, we have public housing authorities, Atlanta Housing Authority, East Point, College Park. They really have the capability to collaborate together and focus on what we like to call housing affordability, because when you say affordable housing, some people are afraid of it, because it doesn't mean a mom with 4 kids. It means new college graduates. Where will they live? How will they live? And Atlanta has a big convention trade. So do these people have to move 50 miles out to try to come into town and make $10 an hour? It doesn't make sense. And Atlanta has available land. But we have to continue to remind politicians that they cannot accept what the status quo is. And the status quo obviously doesn't change unless it becomes uncomfortable. We try to make it uncomfortable so that the status quo can change. And so that's our structure focus again, and continued collaborations like we had with Georgia Stand Up, with New Georgia Project. If we all work together, even though we might have, central differences, but if we're working for the same mission, then we can better accomplish it.
Thank you for the question. First of all, happy Earth Day, everyone. I'm just so happy to be here. God is good. And we're here because we care about the earth and we care about the people on the earth. And so Georgia Stand Up's role is a little bit different than creating development at this stage. What we try to do is to hold development accountable.
Well, you guys did a great job working together, and the mission was accomplished. And that is to get more voters out in Georgia than ever before. So, yes, your collaboration showed up, and you guys kind of showed out this year. Thank you so much. And Gerald McDowell, you're next. Tell us what's going on in 2021 and your CID, and we appreciate you being here again. Share with us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for inviting us to participate in this panel. I'm a board member for an organization called the Aerotropolis Atlanta Alliance, and that organization is the steward of the Aerotropolis initiative, which covers all of South Fulton, so every city in South Fulton, and it covers Clayton County. We are part of that initiative, and that initiative is to make the airport area a destination for new development, for new housing, for educational opportunities, for jobs, and all of the above. Our role as an organization, as a community improvement district, we are actually in the process of rebranding ourselves. And so we just came out with a new name. We're the ATL Airport Community Improvement District. And with our focus in 2021 and going forward, probably can be summarized by saying we are focusing on creating the 21st century infrastructure that is necessary in South Metro to allow for future growth and development. We recognize in the Atlanta region that South Metro is probably going to be the area where growth takes place over the next 50 years. But the type of growth that occurs is going to depend on the infrastructure that is in place. The infrastructure dictates the type of development, the type of the choices you have for residential communities, the choices you have for education, the choices you have for jobs. It all depends on the infrastructure. If your road network, if your transportation system is not adequate, then you're not going to attract those developments and those projects and those families that will allow that growth to take place.
So what I heard, Gerald, and I'm just going to throw this out on the table and park it, is that are these two social justice organizations at the table inside of the Aerotropolis. And they may not be partners or on the board, but are they there as we talk about infrastructure and building that infrastructure? If they are not, then what I would hope after today is that we have some opportunity to invite them to the rooms and to the planning sessions so that there is not this gap of expertise in the room. If your community voices are not lifted up through organizations like NAACP, like Stand Up, then how does the voice get there? Especially if the elected official is not connected back to some of these strong voices that are on the front lines and that are inside the household of Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, Mr. and Mrs. Jackson. And so thank you for allowing me to park that and to just share that, and hopefully there'll be some improvement. And so with that said,
put a little salt on it since you put it on there.
You
Just
can
put a
put-
little salt on it.
you can put
So
salt
in
on
other words, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so we want to make sure that we're at the table and that we grow the buffet. You know, oftentimes we fight over a crumb of pie, right? And so what we like to say is let's grow a buffet so we can all eat. The developers can eat, the community can eat, the businesses can eat, but we got to make sure Mrs. Johnson and Mrs. Jackson and her kids and Bebe and Tyrone eat too. And so I think we're at the table.
Absolutely.
So thank you for the salt. So, I'm going to the Crisco. So we're gonna go over to Miss Inga Kennedy and get some Crisco, because you know before you put anything in the pan, and you might salt and pepper it,
That's right.
but you got to put some grease in there to cook it with.
Yeah.
So planning and zoning and the work that you do, being at the table in these partnerships and giving information, how does that work, and how do you see the region improving as you bring your expertise to the table?
Well, I'm glad that, and I'm going to jump around on a
That's
couple
fine.
of things. The first thing in the South Metro is I'm glad to see our elected officials, and coming back to that, start to embrace. They haven't fully embraced it, but start to embrace transit. Our communities sometimes look down on transit, and therefore those people who need transit and don't connect where the housing needs to be relative to the transit. So I'm glad to see that they're embracing transit. 20 years ago, they did not.
Right.
And they were just like other parts of our region. They looked down upon people who rode the bus or needed to ride the bus. Not everybody wants to drive. Not everybody can drive. And so there should be choices. We also have to, and I'm glad to also see our communities, they are embracing sidewalks and trails. And so you have a trail system that all of the jurisdictions have brought into.
That's right.
But our communities are developing sidewalks, as Deborah mentioned, and so that people can arrive at where they want to arrive at, or just walk for the fun of it or the health of it. But a lot of the jurisdictions are starting to embrace that and communicating with each other to connect sidewalks and ultimately transit. There were people in Clayton County, there were elected officials in Clayton County who fought
Yes.
the system coming in, fought it vigorously to not come in, and the communities prevail, the public prevail. But so we have to go back to making sure that our elected officials are connected with our people. And the other thing that we have to make sure that we embrace in the right way and look at in the right way is housing. I don't look at housing as affordable and unaffordable. I think housing is a right, and people should be able to access housing where they would like to. Now, I've been around for a long time, and I've seen these terminologies emerge because people are uncomfortable with now the terminology of affordable housing. And I see them, and it's coming out of my industry. The new terminology is workforce housing. I'm real concerned about that terminology
Yes.
because it says two things. The first time I heard it, I likened it to plantation housing, because the reason why they wanted workforce housing is because they need the people there to work for them. Otherwise, they don't want them living near them. And so I challenge all of us to challenge that terminology of workforce housing, because we could end up putting people in places where they don't want to be, but where they have to be in order to access their jobs. And I'm concerned about that, Mr. Rose and Deborah, and as you all are out there in the mix and in the trenches, I want you to challenge how we look at housing for people who can't afford a $250,000 house.
Yes.
I elected to, you know where I live. I elected to live in a marginal community because of where it is. I can walk to the grocery store. I can walk to the post office. I can walk to City Hall. I can walk to the drugstore. I don't have to get in my car. I elected to do that. And I hope that we give everyone, I hope that we can give everyone the opportunity to do the same in terms of housing choice. So I wanted to put that out there because I'm concerned about how we tiptoe around the word affordable just to appease a certain community when housing needs to go.
So I would like to just throw something out and you take a little bit of a deeper dive.
Yes.
The state has a program called the GEJS program. It's a community housing program.
Yes.
How could the cities of South Fulton benefit from becoming a GEJS city? I know you represented on the City of Fairburn's GEJS team.
Yes.
You were a member of that. How can cities apply, get that designation, and then how does that work in giving us a diversity of price point and types of housing?
Right.
Share a little bit about that.
One thing about housing, everything doesn't have to be new. And everybody doesn't want to be in a new house either. Some people want their current residence improved. May not have the money, but want them improved so that they can stay in their homes. And so that's one of the programs that GEJS offers is opportunities to finance improvements to people who have homes that may need a new roof or may need a floor or something that could help the quality of life and help them stay in their homes. I think that's, to me, that's one of the best ways to help a community with housing.
We'll talk about the developer side and what they can get from GEJS and coming into our communities if we have that designation.
Yes, and if we have that designation, there are incentives to come in and do those things. And again, not everything has to be new, but they can come in and redevelop. We can come in and look at redeveloping the public housing that you talked about, and there's public housing scattered all over the places, and taking the opportunities to, as Deborah mentioned, everyone can benefit from the pie.
So, Gerald, I'd love for you to piggyback on that, and that's our third question. How do we, inside of the infrastructure focus for the Aerotropolis, how do we ensure that there are community considerations for quality air, quality water, quality growth really happens? Because from what I understand and what I see and what I lived for the last 30 years, in this last 5 years with these centers of warehouses, we are really having most of our tree top decimated. And we can't go back and regrow that. How do we ensure that the work that you're doing has that focus as well, and it's a non-negotiable? Is there anything we can do to help you to bring to surface that inside of the work that you do on the Aerotropolis board?
We have to embrace the legacy of Maynard Jackson.
Come on.
When he created the neighborhood planning units,
Yes, sir.
that changed development in Atlanta in a significant way. And the reason it changed it, because when you have a developer and an investor come into a community, if that developer and investor does not live in that community, that developer and investor is not going to take everything in consideration from the perspective of those who live there. If you go to communities where the developer and an investor also lives in that community, you see a different community. And so the neighborhood planning units did that. It said, okay, if you want to come in with a project, allow the voice of those who live here, partner with you to help you develop and move that project forward. And so in that spirit of Maynard Jackson, what we did one time, we had a study that was underway, and we had come up with a slew of recommended projects. Now, those projects were prioritized. They were prioritized by property owners, business owners, elected officials. And so you came up with 30, 40, 50 projects from 1 to 30, 1 to 40, 1 to 50. When we had the public meeting, we had some discussions from input, like folks like Inga. We had discussions about, okay, how do we invite the public here and make sure that we get the correct feedback from the public and not just emotions? Because, a lot of times we come into meetings and it's very emotional, and we miss holding the elected officials accountable, but even ourselves accountable. So here's what we did. So when you came to this public meeting and you registered, you were given play money. You were given $1 million of play money. And you will walk around the room, and each project had a price tag. And then you would put money in the bucket for the project that you supported. And what we saw happen that evening, we had a couple 75, 100, 150 people. What we saw happen is someone came in very supportive of a particular project, but then they were running out of money. And so they went back and pulled their money out of the bucket, and they said, I want this project. And so that their choices change. And so now, when those same people started talking to the elected officials, they started talking with a different paradigm. They said, okay, you guys are not taking into consideration how much these projects cost. If you do project X, you're going to take all our money, and we don't have any more money to do anything else, right? So we changed the way the general public look and engage with the elected officials, and that's what we've got to do in the Aerotropolis. If we're going to create a place that's a destination, and we want to see this built out over the next 25 years, we have to create an environment where everybody is at the table and everyone's voice is heard, and that we make it a win-win. We want to make sure that developers and investors can see that they can come and achieve their goals, but we also want to make sure that when they achieve their goals, that we also achieve the goals of people who live there, work there, and come there to support.
So share with me if there's anything you can foresee or that you're finishing out, but maybe we can open the door, Ms. Sykes, in the next 5 years, 10 years to work together for great impact.
And I think Gerald did it best. He really put a clear distinction on the difference between equity and equality. Yes. Equality is about giving people the same thing. Equity is about giving people the same opportunity to achieve their success. And I think that we don't do enough of that. I had the pleasure of meeting Deborah, I don't know how many years ago now, a couple of years, 2-3 years ago now. But she really worked with us and partnered with us so that we can help increase and maximize community participation around a project in Oakland City. And it was one that was not going well, but through a partnership I created with this beautiful woman to my right, we were able to build a trusting relationship with the community and really hear the voices of the community and the desires and the wants and the needs for what they wanted to see in their community, and created an RFP for a project that we think will ultimately meet those needs and those desires of that community.
Can you share what that project is?
It's the Murphy Crossing redevelopment project. It's a 20+ acre site, which was the former state farmers market in Atlanta. And so we own that site. We're about to launch an RFP for that project in the coming weeks, where we another RFP, and we're able to get to the second RFP as a result of some, again, community voice and participation and input. But we'll release that RFP in the next few weeks, where we will hopefully see a mixed-use project that will contain housing that is affordable, job opportunities, small business opportunities, parks, green space, arts, culture, really a comprehensive development that will bring investment and resources and like full life to a property that's sat vacant for way too long. In a partnership that we formed, I think, with the NAACP back in the day, Mr. Reach, you guys held us accountable and said that we were not doing enough in terms of partnering with minority and Black-owned businesses to build out and to design the Beltline project. And so I'm happy to share that we have given ourselves a stretch goal to increase our partnership with Black and Brown-owned construction firms and businesses from 30 to 50% people of color. And so that is a stretch goal that we have, that we are seeking to implement. We're using any additional resources that we get from the Special Services District to make sure that we partner with Black and Brown-owned design firms and construction firms to build out the trail. We think history will judge us, and my reputation is on the line, and so I want to make sure that history views me and the work that I've done for Beltline well, and that we're going to be trying to build up the capacity of firms of color to have a part in this project and really begin to build wealth in our Black communities. And so I'm just excited about the work that we have set before us, and I'm excited about my opportunity.
Yes.
Oh, I have so many things to say. I was taking copious notes. Okay. So a couple of things, because I got to put some pepper on the table and some hot sauce. So we got the salt already. So I'm glad you mentioned Maynard Jackson, and we can't talk about the NPU system without talking about the minority participation. And because he said that airport would not be built without minority participation, he said if they can use concrete on a driveway, they could do a runway.
Absolutely.
So that, but we want the jobs from soup to nuts, from the accountant down to the construction person. So want to make sure that you have community benefits and minority participation in all the projects that we're talking about. And as we're talking about innovation, we're not just talking about affordable housing for those who are at 50% or 80% AMI. We're talking about those 0 to 30% AMI. Where do they live? How do they participate? As we talk about TOD, transit-oriented development, what we're looking at, and the reason why that project that Nonette talked about was so important to us, is because we're looking at the health of those who live a half a mile from a transit stop. And so Murphy Crossing could be that destination center that people said that they needed in their community when they said they didn't have a grocery store. We're looking at that. Well, could that be a site for a grocery store or fresh food? You know, it used to be the farmer's market. So where do people get their fresh onions now, right? So we want to make sure that there's a continuity of themes. So when we're looking at a project, and to your point about looking at contiguous spaces, we're looking at from the Atlanta University Center, which me and Mr. Rose have both attended, from the AU Center all up to the airport and beyond, and the impact along that corridor. So if we look at that Lee Street corridor in the same way, of all of those cities that are contiguous to it, if I got on the train in Clayton County, because there will be a train in Clayton County, if I got off the stop at Murphy's Crossing, can I go get my tomato? And then could I go to West End, and can I get my doctor's appointments at the new West End clinic? So we're looking at every step. And then can I go to college and go at Clark, all on that same bus or that train line? And, you know, and then go back home, pick up my child, and go to the dry cleaner on the way home, and then go get a cafe to a coffee on the way home. How do you make sure that we benefit from the development that's coming, and those that look like us benefit and who can't afford to be there? The other thing is, as we're looking at the role of innovation, we have to, and all of us are around the same age, we have to bring the next generation into the room and into the conversation so that we're not losing this information that we have, that we've acquired from Maynard. I think I met you on Maynard's campaign years ago, so that we have acquired all these years. So I always try to bring a young person, an intern with me, and try to develop them. It takes 5 years really to develop an organizer, to really get these development projects and how that they really relate to a Mrs. Johnson. And so in keeping them first. So we have to make sure we have multi-generational coalitions as we do this work. Thank you so much.
I love that. Multi-generational coalitions.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Deborah Scott, Executive Director from Stand Up. So before we leave this roundtable of innovation and development, we want to say for those who are partnering with us on Earth Day through Zoom or some other platform of technology, you are really our audience. You are our focus. We're doing this because all of us need the work, we need the wealth of information, and we need the tools and the people who are in place to move us forward in South Fulton, South Metro County. Thank you guys for being out there today and joining us. God bless.